In this video, we're going to be going over some wrist mobility. Specifically, this is going to focus primarily on wrist extension, but we will also be going over some wrist flexion. This is going to involve PAILs and rails utilizing the functional range conditioning training principles, and we're going to go ahead and get right into it. A couple things to consider prior to this is if you are somebody who already has problematic wrists, you know you have pain or pinching in your wrists, please proceed with caution as you do this. Closing angle pain is something we do not want to force into. So what is closing angle pain? Basically, if we are going to be pushing our wrist into extension, like so, if you get a pinch, pressure, or pain on top of your wrist where this angle is closing and getting smaller, that is a closing angle pain, and we want to make sure we work within our pain capacity, within our range of motion capacity, our comfort capacity. We do not want to smash into that. That means there is stuff in the way. We need to clear those things up, usually via manual intervention, and that's where a manual therapist would come in, or somebody like myself who's a functional range release practitioner. But if you have those issues, take note of them, try to work within your comfort zones, and don't smash. From here, we will get into wrist extension. So, couple things for wrist extension, couple options for wrist extension, I should say. You can have a box, or you can do this on the ground. You can take this exact same format and just do it with your hand on the wall and do the same thing. And there's a one where you just do it with your own hand, and I'll show you that in a second. We're going to take our wrist, we're going to place it down. You are more than welcome to do both hands at the same time, but for this video, we are just going to do one hand. So I'm going to take my hand, palm is down, but I'm going to spin around. And since the box is at a weird angle, I'm going to take a little step over it. And this is usually most comfortable for me to go through this position. So from the side here, this is kind of what we're looking like. So we want to stack the joints. We do not want to try to hyperextend anything necessarily. We just want to keep things strong and stacked. We are trying to find a stretch on the opening side of the wrist / forearm. We should feel stretchy stuff coming through here. We do not want pinch here. That's closing angle joint pain. We do not want to work with that. From the stretch perspective, we want to find a good, clean, healthy stretch that we can breathe and relax into. We will sit on this stretch for anywhere from 30 seconds to 2 minutes plus, depending on what has been recommended by your trainer, your professional that you're working with, or depending on what your stretch tolerance and endurance is simply like. Some people cannot hold a stretch very long. They just haven't been trained to do it. Some people have gotten really used to being stretchy and doing bendy things, and they can sit in stretches for a long time. So you have to listen to that. So from here, we play like we've sat in our stretch for 30 seconds to 2 minutes, whatever it might be. First, we must irradiate and build tension. So we're going to flex the core, even though it's a hand movement. So we're going to flex the core. We're going to then put tension into our wrist as if we are going to flex it. We're going to flex the elbow and the shoulder. So I have primed and engaged every muscle in my arm. And now I'm going to take my hand and I'm going to act like I'm going to push it into the box. I'm going to start very lightly at 1% effort. And I want to feel the tension engage through the front of my arm here. And then I'm going to slowly increase my pressure down. I'm pushing through the fingers, the palm of my hand, and the thumb. And we're trying to make all of this tissue work together to contract. I'm going to flex into my bicep and the front of my shoulder. And we're going to make this whole line work. I'm going to hold for 10 to 30 seconds, depending on what has been recommended. And then I'm going to very slowly, keeping all of the tension, transition into an attempt to lift my hands and fingers up off the box. They are not going to move. This is a They are not going to move. This is a regressive angular isometric, or a rails contraction, where the other side was a PAILs contraction. So now we are working the closing side tissue. We're flexing the forearm, the top of the hand, and the fingers, and we are trying to build awareness through this back side of the arm. Tricep is flexed, forearm flexed, even back of the shoulder, core, everything is firing, and we hold that contraction ramping up for 10 to 30 seconds. And then we ease off. We relax the hand completely. After we take a breath in and settle into the stretch, we should feel as though we can go a little bit deeper into our stretch. And then we would sit for just a moment. We rinse and repeat, and we go through 1 to 4 rounds of wrist extension, PAILs and rails, depending on what has been recommended. From here, you would go through wrist controlled articular rotations, which is a very strong and precise isolated joint movement maximizing wrist range of motion. I have another video for that one. But from here, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys the wrist extension standing. So if we did it here on the box, all we're going to do is hold out like so. You can hold this down here, you can hold it up, you can hold it overhead. It does not matter. Each one of these positions is going to give you a slightly different force vector or force line, tension line, and then we just train that. So we find our stretch. Same thing, we breathe, we relax on it, we take a breath in, breath out, we brace the core, we flex through the whole arm, and then we push the fingers in the palm into the blocking hand, starting light and ramping up. We get to a nice strong effort, and then we slowly reverse, keeping our tension. Again, starting light, ramping up, holding for 10 to 30 seconds, and then we would relax, and then we should be able to pull, hopefully be able to pull a little bit deeper into that wrist extension position. From here, it is the exact same principles that we just talked about, but now instead of wrist extension, it is wrist flexion. So you would pull the hand back into your stretch this way now. You will stretch the top of the wrist through the elbow stuff coming up, and then it's the same thing. You hold your stretch, you push your fingers in hand, opening against the blocking hand, 10 to 30 seconds, keeping all your tension, and then you would try to reverse it, going this way, trying to almost pull off of the blocking hand, 10 to 30 seconds. Now, wrist flexion is substantially more sensitive for most people than wrist extension, usually. So proceed with caution, listen to pain. Even though this is not closing angle pain, technically when you pull this way, sometimes this stuff gets really sharp and sensitive. So if that's the case, you just need to listen to that and make sure you're not pissing off your body and inflaming and irritating tissue. So that is our wrist extension and wrist flexion PAILs and rails video. If you have any questions with these, please feel free to send me those and we can talk about troubleshooting. And thanks for watching, guys. That's it. We'll see you all in the next one.